Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is another ArtConnects interview with our artists who are involved in the exhibition this summer that is a collaboration between Great Falls Public Schools and C.M. Russell Museum staff. I am here with Marci Wolff. She is an educator with Great Falls Public Schools. Thank you, Marci, for joining me. Would you like to start out by introducing yourself and telling me a little bit about what you do as an artist and what you do as an art educator?
I'm a painter, and I like to draw portraits. I do narrative paintings. I just got my MFA from Savannah College of Art and Design. So I had many years to sort of look inward and paint outward, and yeah, so I do that, but I also teach K through 6 art at Great Falls Public Schools, and I'm in my 5th month, and yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
Well, your paintings are really beautiful. Do you paint in oil?
I do, yeah, that's my preferred medium.
Okay.
I love it for its versatility because you can go super thin it down and use it like watercolor, and layer it up, or you can go super thick, and it just retains its vibrancy, and I love the way it smells, the linseed oil and the turpentine, there's just I just love the visceral feel of it. And it's similar to charcoal, you get that soft kind of feel of the burnt wood, but you also have this really great versatility range in what it can do with charcoal and oil paint. So those are my favorite mediums to work in.
And what brought you to those two mediums as your choice?
Gosh, I think I first started working in acrylic in high school. I think my art teacher handed me a potato. And I was trying to paint prints from a magazine, and I was having a really bad morning already, and so I was sort of like putting that into my portrait, and I just really liked the gooiness, and it was like cake batter, but stiffer. And then when I got into college at Kutztown University, I had an intro to painting class, and yeah, we had a very basic set of oil paints, and that's where I learned how to, we started painting people. We learned how to, so because acrylics and oils are very similar, but there's more drying time, more think time with oils. So I don't know, there's just some, I think it's because of the think time that I learned about in college. And it just seemed a little bit more legitimate to me, honestly. I don't know, when I went to art school, then all we worked in was oils. Acrylics wasn't even really a thing. But acrylics are handy, they dry fast. So I like it for that reason. But yeah, I think in art school in Chicago, our teachers were just get a very basic limited palette, and that's what we worked in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
When you say think time, do you mean like it takes a while to dry, so you have time to work with it?
Right. So that as well. So because it doesn't dry right away like acrylic would, if you're making a mistake, you can just dip your rag into turpentine, go over it, soak the canvas, and it'll really just erase it. It'll come right off. Whereas acrylic, you can't really do that. It stains, it gets into the acrylic, the acrylic gets into the canvas, and it's there, it just binds. But because you're dealing with earth, and actual pigment and oil, it just comes off easier with linseed oil. So yeah, so there's that. You can erase your mistakes, and also, yeah, because it doesn't dry as fast, I think mixing, going all prima, just working oil into oil, you can do that. You can just create it while it's still on the canvas and get some live action going on, and instead of worrying about it drying in 15 minutes and, so yeah, there's more playtime, I think.
What inspires or influences the art that you make?
Okay, so from the time inspired content-wise and then inspired process-wise, two different things. But the content, so this is all graduate school work. And so 2015, I painted the baby catchers. And that was about composition, looking to paintings from, I think it was the 16th century paintings, Flemish paintings. I chose Peter Paul Rubens. And his painting, it was like a Jesus falling off, falling, and you're in a church, and you've got, it's very similar to how mine turned out. I sort of just plugged it in and used that as a reference point, borrowed from the narrative very loosely. I never really knew what the actual painting was about that Rubens did, and I kind of wanted to keep it that way. But for me, it was a really important painting. It was an origin story painting for me. And it was wrapped in with the fact that I started meditating in 2015. And I was starting to process a lot of old trauma. So being a transracial adoptee, right, is part of my identity. Not all of it, but it's a part of me that I needed to sort of wrap up and have closure with, which I didn't have for a really long time. So in finding that painting that sort of spoke to, this child sort of just falling off, of course it was Jesus, but, for me, it was like, oh, I can plug my narrative into that, and it makes sense with my origin story, my adoption story. So it's called The Baby Catchers. It's a lot about my family, my adopted family. They're the figures at the bottom about to catch me. And then it's also seen from a point of view of a child, of me, not understanding like the socio-political, machinations that are going behind, like, why did this happen? How does adoption work? What are the cultural differences, and how does race work, and how does that play into things, and loss and trauma and all that stuff? No clue. All I know is that the little baby in the painting is like, I want my mommy, Yeah. And so you see me in a whole lot of different phases, throughout the painting, sort of as a child, not understanding like, oh, why am I falling off this cliff, or why are these monsters pushing me off, and stick figures, is kind of a kid, thing that they understand and can do. So a lot of that, yeah, it's just sort of processing old trauma, old pain of that, and then having it in front of you really kind of helps you. It helps me as a visual person and learner. It helps me process, that. So it's really, really pivotal in my own personal development, and healing, and moving on from that. And again, being influenced, learning how to meditate compassionately. There's this place in Arlie called Namchak, and I learned how to meditate online, and then I started going there for other things to learn how to meditate with actual monks. And Pema Chodron, you can learn how to do this online, but you're really just transmuting your suffering, and you're breathing it in, you're taking it in visually and through your heart, you're exhaling the opposite of whatever is ailing you. So whatever kind of suffering. So once I began to do that, as a painter, the membrane's so thin, whatever's going on here and here, of course it's going to show up in your work. So it was just a really good reminder of that I can do that. I can self-heal. And I think we all can.
When you start a painting, how do you capture, like, how do you go from start to finish in your conceptual process? So you start out with this notion, like, for example, in the baby catchers, you start out with this notion of identity and trauma, and then you put it into a painting. Is there a concrete conceptual process behind that, or is it more just kind of like a fluid
So yeah,
development on the canvas?
there's definitely a strategy. There's definitely a method. All of these things we went through, I mean, it was an actual assignment where you had to come up with your own composition. You had to link it to a 16th century painter. So I began with sketches. I think, and this was something that was building within me for a long time. And so just sketching stick figures, kind of stuff, stuff like that. And then I think when I saw the painting, I was like, ooh, I just knew right away that that resonated and that was going to work. And then so what did I do? I know the last step was putting the color in. So everything was just monochromatic at that point from the sketch. And like the night before I was going to finish it, the night before it was due, I just threw in the color, and the color just, for me, as many people, it has a subjective meaning to it. It's not always conscious because it's happening so fast. But afterwards, when you look at it, just like other abstract works I've done like that, you can decode it and figure out how that applies. It's your own visual language. So for instance, like the black and white shirt on the little kid up front is like a bee, a bee. I associate bee stinging. So, a lot of this I'm figuring out after the fact, and realizing that I can trust my instincts when I'm painting, and that it is going to make sense of what I'm trying to say. But with some of my charcoal drawings, I was inspired by Edward Curtis and his gold tone photos of the Native Americans. Mm-hmm. And just so beautiful. I saw it in the library and I was like, oh my God, this guy was good. And he was like the premier portrait photographer in his day. And I can see why. It's just gorgeous. And so it really made me want to break out the charcoals and work on value and just rendering with very limited palette. So that's what I did. And I think I learned a lot just looking at something that you like to look at goes a long way in inspiring you as an artist. So I just did drawings from his photography for a really long time, right before I decided to get back into school and get my grad degree. Because it's like, do what you love, you know what I mean? Like, life is short. Invest in yourself, in your life, and your loves. So anyway, when you see another artist doing something amazing, it's inspiring. And so that was a starting point for those drawings. They all feed into each other in some way. As a teacher, I feel like being an artist and have actually found my voice and understood how to use art to express myself really, and having so many different ways of drawing, like realistically, or maybe a little cartoony, or maybe even just art therapeutically, gives me a wider like overview of, so when I see kids just scribbling lines like today, going crazy with colors, and the assignment was about, tell me about yourself. I was like, oh my God, we have an abstract expressionist in the house, put this on the wall. Yeah. A kid who, is just an insanely good, cartoonist, and goes with it and doesn't care at all about what it looks like. If it looks real, but he's telling his life story, you know? Or when you get a fifth grader who is frustrated because they don't know how to draw hair, I can help her with that, you know? So learning after spending half my life already trying to figure out what art does for me, therapeutically it helps. Technically, I've always wanted to know how to draw better and paint better, more realistically, I'd say, more but then also being able to express myself in a less realistic way, but more true to myself, but still communicating something. Those three places, I think, legitimizes a lot of what the kids are doing. It doesn't have to be a certain way. I can't stand Instagram art lessons where everybody has to learn the same thing and do the same, you know, step by step. Like, okay, it has its time and place. But let's hear from you. You know, this is about connecting to yourself. So I tell the students, you know, we're going to learn a little bit of 3 different ways why art is useful for you. Mm-hmm. And so after having done that, I feel like I really want to sort of give some knowledge and skills back to the kids. And so now it's just about learning how to manage a classroom and getting them into something interesting, which is so far been successful.
You kind of answered what my next question is, and that's if being an educator has influenced you or in your artwork, or vice versa, if the students play a role in influencing.
Well, honestly, ever since I became a teacher, my time for making art has gone way down, like almost nothing. The only art I'm making is I cut paper out today for the bulletin board showcasing their art. I might do a demo now and then. Somebody gave me a challenge to do the Nine Tails box, and I was like, yay, I get to draw, you know? But otherwise, you know, this time is more about them and about sort of planting some seeds. And I feel like this summer I'll be able to paint more. But yeah, no, it's really hard to do both, honestly. It's 2 separate arts, I believe.
What advice would you give to young people or aspiring artists?
Just keep drawing, just keep making. Don't listen to other people. Don't listen, and honestly, don't listen to the negative voices in your head. You know, we all have that inner critic, and give yourself a chance to let something evolve. You know, it doesn't have to look perfect. Everything, you know, things happen incrementally, like everything else. Just give yourself the chance to try things out and see where it goes and see how you interact with it. Just let yourself go in all different directions. You know, children, they're developing, you know, whether it's painting or drawing or, I mean, building things out of paper in 3 dimensions, whether it's performance. I mean, you know, just be you and just encourage yourself and just let yourself, don't get down on yourself. Be aware of those negative voices and cheer yourself on. That's my advice.
Those are good.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add that I haven't asked you?
No, not really. Just thank you for taking the time to interview me and letting me talk about my work. Thank you.
Well, thank you for interviewing me. I appreciate you taking the time as well. You have beautiful work and you're obviously a very energetic artist and educator. So
thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure too. Thank you.